Every Sunday morning for the past 8 years, without fail, Harold would wake before the sun, boil exactly 1 cup of black coffee, and pack a single envelope in the left pocket of his faded jacket. The paper was always the same, slightly yellowed, lined, folded with precision, and each letter was addressed to a man buried beneath the cold granite stone in section D17 of Maple Grove Veteran Cemetery. The name on the stone was Corporal James Jimmy Dawson, KIA, Afghanistan, 2015. Harold had been there the day that name was etched into the marble. He remembered standing beside Jimmy's mother, holding back tears, feeling like the world had spun too fast and flung them all off balance. Jimmy had been his best friend, his foxhole brother, the only one who had stood beside him when things got truly dark. And when Jimmy didn't come back from that last patrol, a part of Harold stayed in the desert with him. The Army's letter had said, "presumed dead," but the explosion left no room for hope. There was no body, only a helmet found near a crater, some tattered fabric from his uniform and blood. Too much to belong to someone still alive. The official ceremony came 2 weeks later, the flag folded, the medals handed to a mother who could barely stand. But for Harold, closure never came. So instead, he began to write. At first, the letters were raw. Grief poured onto the page like open wounds. He wrote about the guilt, why he survived and Jimmy didn't, the things they'd promised each other, the future they never got to live. Then came the updates. Jimmy, the VA, finally approved my benefits. Took him long enough. Jimmy, I met someone. She reminds me of your sister. Talks too damn much. Jimmy, I'm still not sleeping. Same dreams, same desert. Over time, the letters became part of Harold's life. He never mailed them, never shared them. He simply folded them neatly, walked the quiet path to Jimmy's grave, and placed the envelope beneath the headstone where the rain couldn't reach. He'd sit beside the grave in silence, sip his coffee, and sometimes speak aloud as if Jimmy could still hear. No one ever questioned the old man in the jacket, always on the same bench, always looking like he was waiting for something. Until one Sunday, something was different. He noticed it the moment he approached the stone. The leaves had been disturbed in a way that wasn't natural, as though someone had stood there just moments before. When he knelt down to place the letter, he saw it. A folded piece of paper tucked carefully beneath the bouquet of faded plastic flowers that Jimmy's mother had placed there last month. At first, Harold thought it was something from a groundskeeper, or maybe a prank from some teenager with no respect for the dead. But when he picked it up and unfolded it, his breath caught in his throat. The handwriting was unfamiliar, shaky, uncertain. But the name at the bottom hit him like a bullet. It read, H, if you're still coming, if this isn't just a voice in my head, then I don't know how the hell you hear me. But I hear you. Every word. Every Sunday. I don't know if I'm going crazy. Maybe I am. Maybe this is all just a story I'm telling myself to stay sane. But if it's not, if it's real, then thank you for not forgetting me. J. Harold stood frozen, staring at the paper, his mind racing. It couldn't be. Jimmy was dead. They never recovered his body. No one survived that kind of blast. But the note, the way it referenced the letters, the tone, the nickname, only Jimmy ever used for him. It felt real. Too real. He didn't sleep that night. He reread the letter a dozen times, searching for clues, codes, signs that someone was playing a sick joke. But no one else knew about the letters. Not even the woman he'd been seeing on and off the last few years. And certainly no one knew about the thing Jimmy used to say when things got rough. If I go dark, H, promise me, keep talking, I'll find my way back. It was something they joked about in the sand, half delirious from heat and fear. But it had stuck. And now, the phrase echoed in his mind like a ghost. Over the next few Sundays, Harold kept writing. But this time, he began adding questions. Not just updates, not just feelings. Questions only Jimmy could answer. What was the name of the stray dog we fed behind the mess tent? What song did you sing in the Humvee that made me want to throw you out of it? Where did we bury your lucky coin when the captain caught us gambling? And then he waited. 1 week passed, nothing. 2 weeks, still nothing. On the third week, there it was. Another note, this one answering all three questions in perfect, maddening detail. The dog's name was Toothpick. The song was Brown Eyed Girl, sung off key. The coin was buried behind the latrines, beneath a rock shaped like Texas. Harold's hands trembled as he held the paper. His heart pounded so loud he thought he might faint. This wasn't possible. Unless Jimmy had survived. Unless he hadn't died, but had been taken. Lost. Forgotten. 10 years was a long time. Enough time to vanish from records. Enough time to be imprisoned, hidden, even presumed dead. Harold knew better than to believe in miracles, but this felt like one. And now he had to find out the truth. Was Jimmy alive? Was he nearby? Was someone else sending these? He didn't know, but he was damn sure going to find out. Because if there was even the smallest chance that his friend had survived, that he was out there waiting, then Harold wasn't going to stop writing. He wasn't going to stop searching. Not now. Not after everything. Not after 8 years of talking to a grave. The silence had been broken, and the letters to nowhere might finally be going somewhere. Harold didn't know where to begin, but he started anyway. The very next day after receiving the second letter, he returned to the grave and stood quietly, as if expecting Jimmy to rise out of the stone itself. The cemetery was empty except for a passing groundskeeper, and the silence made everything feel surreal. Clutching the new letter in his pocket, Harold walked home slowly, head down, replaying every conversation, every clue, every letter he'd written over the last 8 years. He pulled out an old shoebox from the back of his closet and emptied it onto the kitchen table. Dozens of letters, some weather-stained, some folded neatly, some crumpled from old tears. He opened them one by one, looking for anything he might have missed, any detail he might have forgotten. Then he began to organize, creating a timeline, tracking the notes he'd left, and cross-referencing the two mysterious responses. His eyes were tired, but his mind was alive with energy he hadn't felt in years. That night, he didn't sleep. He searched military records online, accessed old emails from his service days, and even reached out to one of the few men still alive from his unit. Most of them had long moved on. Some wanted nothing to do with the past, but a few replied with confusion and sympathy. "Jimmy, he's dead, Harold. You saw the flag, same as the rest of us." But Harold didn't believe it anymore. Not fully. Not after those letters. So he tried something bold. He left a letter with a simple question, "Where are you?" and sealed it with a picture of the two of them from Kandahar, arms slung over each other's shoulders, dirty and smiling. The next week, another response came. This one was short, written in shaky handwriting that looked like it had been written with an injured hand. "I don't know where this place is, somewhere cold, mountains. They speak Russian. I'm not supposed to write, I'm not supposed to live, but I'm still here." Harold nearly dropped the letter when he read the last part. I'm not supposed to live. Who the hell had him? Who had kept Jimmy hidden for a decade? He immediately called an old intelligence contact he hadn't spoken to in years. Off the record, Harold said, "What are the chances someone goes missing in a war zone and ends up somewhere else?" The voice on the other end paused, then quietly said, "You'd be surprised? It's rare, but it happens." With that tiny sliver of confirmation, Harold doubled down. He started going back through every letter, rewriting the important parts into coded summaries, and mailing them anonymously to a P.O. box he still kept under a fake name from his service days. He needed someone in higher places to see it. Someone who could help. But more than that, he needed to keep writing to Jimmy. Because somehow, someway, Jimmy was reading. The responses slowed. 1 week nothing, then another. Then, finally, another note. They moved me. I'm underground now. I think in a facility. They don't speak English, but they stopped checking my clothes. I found a way to send this. Don't stop. Harold's hands were shaking as he read it. His mouth dry, his heart pounding. Underground? Facility? This was bigger than he thought. Someone was hiding his friend, someone with power. This wasn't just a lost soldier. It was a cover-up. Every instinct Harold had from years in service kicked in. He began keeping two sets of notes, one for Jimmy and one for himself. He logged everything, the time of every letter, the weather, the phrasing, even the smell of the paper. One message came with a faint trace of diesel. Another had a smudge of clay. He wasn't sure what he was looking for yet, but he trusted it would matter. He also stopped talking to others about it. Some people thought he was going crazy, writing letters to a grave, chasing ghosts. But Harold knew. He felt it in his bones. Jimmy was out there, trapped, and somehow, miraculously, reaching back. One rainy night, Harold sat at his table and wrote his boldest letter yet. "I'm coming for you," he wrote. "I don't know how, but I will find you, I promise. Just hold on. Tell me one thing only you would know. Something no one else could fake. Something from before." A week later, he got his answer, written in barely legible scrawl. "Remember the night before deployment when you couldn't sleep and we snuck under the roof of the barracks? You told me you'd never had a brother. I told you I'd be one. That's still true. Roof brothers forever." Harold's breath caught in his chest. That moment was never spoken aloud again, not even in any of the letters. No one else knew. It was real. Jimmy was alive. And Harold knew now. There was no going back. He would burn every bridge if he had to, call in every favor, chase every whisper. His friend was out there and the world had moved on without him. But not Harold. Never Harold. 10 years of silence had been broken by letters, and those letters became a lifeline. As the weeks turned into months, Harold never stopped writing. The grave still received its weekly envelope, but the messages became more urgent, more hopeful. Somewhere out there, Jimmy was alive, sending cryptic messages from captivity, smuggling handwritten fragments of his soul through unknown cracks in the world. Harold could feel it. His time was running out. He wasn't the same man who came home from the war. He wasn't even the same man who started writing the first letter. But the promise he made on that rooftop all those years ago burned hotter than ever. He had called in every favor, spoken to retired intelligence officers, ex-contractors, even some people he probably shouldn't have contacted. Each connection brought him closer, but always just shy of an exact location. Then, after nearly a year of tracking clues and decoding references in Jimmy's letters, something changed. A message arrived that simply said, "Cold is gone. Heat. Smells like diesel again. Saw a Red Crescent truck. Might be Syria. I heard them say, transfer. I'm close to something." Harold circled the date on the calendar. October 4th. That was the last letter he ever received. After that, nothing. For months, he waited. No response. No sign. He continued to write, to visit the grave, though now it felt more like a ritual than a conversation. The silence returned like an old enemy, and for a while, Harold believed it had ended the way everyone originally thought it had 10 years ago. He was too old to launch any kind of rescue, and the authorities had told him repeatedly that no living American matched Jimmy Dawson's profile in any recent repatriations. Then, in the spring of the following year, his phone rang. An unfamiliar voice on the other end simply said, "Mr. Halston, this is Colonel Reeves. We need to meet. It's about Corporal Dawson." Harold's knees nearly gave out. He didn't even ask questions. The meeting took place in a secure federal building. Reeves laid down a file marked confidential, smeared with time. A prisoner escaped a compound outside of Aleppo. U.S. citizen. Matched Jimmy's DNA. He's being debriefed now. He asked for one person. You. Harold couldn't breathe. It had really happened. 10 years. A ghost turned real. They allowed the meeting a week later at a secure military facility. Harold arrived early, nervous, feeling both ancient and reborn. They led him into a sterile room with white walls and humming lights. And then the door opened. A man walked in, lean, older, scarred, his hair grayer than it should have been, beard unkempt, his eyes sunken but unmistakable. Jimmy, alive. Their eyes locked. Neither moved for a moment. It was like time stopped. Then Jimmy took one step forward, then another, and Harold rushed to meet him. They embraced like brothers, tight, desperate, disbelieving. Jimmy whispered, "I read every word. You kept me alive." Harold said nothing because words were never enough. Later, over quiet coffee in the facility's cafeteria, Jimmy told him everything he could. The explosion didn't kill him. It knocked him out cold. He woke up in a truck, then a basement, then a cage. He was moved from place to place, traded between groups like a ghost nobody wanted to claim publicly. He learned to disappear in plain sight. Writing those letters back to Harold had been a risk, but he had found a broken courier route, a sympathetic worker, a sliver of hope. "You never stopped," Jimmy said. "You never gave up." Harold smiled faintly. "I made a promise." Jimmy looked down at his hands. "So what now?" Harold exhaled. "Now you come home. You're not a letter anymore. You're real." A month later, the media tried to cover the story, but Jimmy declined interviews. He didn't want to be a symbol or a headline. He moved quietly to a small town near Harold. The grave marked with his name remained, but now it stood empty, a reminder of what had been lost and what had been found. And though the Sunday letters stopped, Harold still visited once in a while, not to mourn, but to remember. And when people asked what happened to the man who used to talk to a headstone, some said he'd finally found peace. Others said the grave was just a place for ghosts. But Harold knew the truth. The letters to nowhere had found their destination. And in doing so, they brought a soldier home.